This is part 2 of Bob Legasa surviving a grizzly bear attack while hunting elk in the Montana wilderness in October of 2018. If you haven't heard part 1, go listen to that first and come back. We are dropping into the story after a mother grizzly bear knocked Bob onto the ground, bit his arm, and hit his face with her claws. What saved Bob's life, for now, was his hunting partner Greg spraying the bear with bear spray multiple times. When the bear let go of Bob, he instantly reached for his own bear spray and then managed to accidentally spray himself in the face. Both hunters are now having a really difficult time seeing anything because of their burning and swollen eyes. They discovered that putting their face in the snow is helping with the pain. Bob doesn't know how bad his injuries are yet because they need to get out of the woods first. They also don't know where the bear went and if she is going to return. This is not an excellent scenario to find yourself in, as your eyes are swelling shut from bear spray. This is the Teeth Podcast. Wild animal attack stories firsthand from the survivors. I am Jeremy Carberry, a wilderness kayak guide, animal handler, the survivor of a few animal attacks myself, and your host.
And I realize that I can't see, and it's deathly quiet. If I'm going to die, it's going to be like right now where I don't see anything. And I realized at that point, I got to fight for this, and pulled my head up and started basically holding open my eyes with my fingers so that I could see. Greg was kind of doing the same thing, and we thought, we got to get out of here.
Bob later credited thinking about his family as the greatest motivation for figuring out how to get to safety.
To get to the road, which the main road was probably about 600-700 yards straight, but that we would have to go through probably another 300 to 400 yards of sagebrush. So we decided to go out the way that we came in. So we backed up and got up on the side of the hill.
So that you could see what's around you.
So we could see what was around us. We had, in a sense, a safe zone where we weren't completely surrounded or immersed in the sagebrush. And we worked our way. It took us a long time to get, almost a third of a mile because we were having to stop, like every couple of minutes and, kind of take a breath where our eyes could kind of get a little bit better. Kind of spitting water in my hand and throwing it in my eyes. And after about 10 minutes of trying to get prepared to leave, of throwing snow in my face and water, I kept spitting water in my hand, and my hand kept on clicking, and it was getting harder to cup. I'd do this and put it in my eye. It was starting to kind of lock up, and I thought, I think she broke my arm. And I'm feeling my arm, and it's like, feels fine. I mean, I could still move my hands, but it was starting to pop and make noise and be a little bit, and it hurt a little bit, not crazy amount. The most of the pain was the burning on my face and, the scratches and that type of stuff. So we made it along the side of that hill, and we saw kind of an opening that was probably around 60, 70 yards wide of a swath of low grass and sagebrush on the side. And we thought we can beeline through that and at least have some sort of visual protection where we're at least somewhat prepared if there is another attack. And made it down to the road, and it was at that point we got to the road. Greg beelined down the main road to back where the truck was. And
Left you alone.
Yeah, I was on a main road, but I mean, it was like, my head was on a swivel. I was starting to get a little bit more visual, and putting more and more water in my eyes, and it was definitely, helping. This now has been probably a half an hour.
Okay, so it's from the attack, about a half an hour to get to the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Greg came and picked me up. We both were whining, because burned. My arm was starting to hurt now and kind of locking up. We got back to our cabin. We were renting a cabin down the road. We got back to that. I took off my coat, and I did not have any blood on my arm or anything, so didn't know exactly what the damage was. So I took off my coat, and my fleece that was on underneath it was soaked with blood, like up to my elbow. And I'm like, oh, this is a little bit more than I anticipated.
Through all the adrenaline, you hadn't even realized your condition.
So I took off the fleece, and at that point, I was down to just my arm, and I could see a huge gouge out of my arm. Literally about the size of my thumb, a hole, the width of it, and the depth of it. It went in probably good 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch, and a flap of skin that was just kind of folded back. You could kind of tell that the arm was broken just from a little bit of disconfiguration. But I mean, I still had I had movement in it, so I wasn't too crazily concerned. Greg, being ski patrol, he's been on ski patrol for about 40 years, has a pretty good first aid kit. Put me in a splint, did a little bit of cleaning on it, put me in a splint, and we made a drive to the Livingston Hospital. And when we got out to the main highway, we ran into the outfitter that lets us hunt there. And we told him what happened and told him, we were heading there. So he got on the horn and he called the sheriff. He called the state patrol. He called the hospital in Livingston, and he called Fish and Game. So we're driving the 60 miles from where our camp is to Livingston, and it's a brutal snowstorm. And literally 30 seconds in front of us, a car slides off the road, flips on its top, and slides off the embankment. And we see all these cars pulling over at that time. And everybody's only going 35, and we're normally like, we'll stop and help, and this time it's like, you know what, we're on our own. Before I got to the hospital driving, I called my wife and told her what happened, and tried to make it as calming as I could that I was attacked by a grizzly, but I was fine. And
how did you try to make that calm news? How did you word that?
Honey, how are you doing today? I got attacked by a grizzly, but I'm fine. No, just had to kind of, lay it on the line of what happened, but certainly not. I guess I didn't want to exaggerate about any of it by any means. I actually wanted to downplay it so that she wasn't freaked out. I mean, I was alive. I knew that,
you were going to live. You knew that you were going to live.
Yeah. I got to the hospital, walk into the emergency room, and as soon as the doors open, the guy behind the desk gets on the horn and goes, "Your bear victim is here." And literally from the ER rooms back there, the door opens up, and here comes a doctor and 2 nurses, wheelchair. I mean, they were on me in literally seconds.
Oh, that's great.
It was amazing. It was amazing. They took me in, started cleaning up my arm, cleaning up my face, looking at the damage that was, around my eye, and did an X-ray on my arm. They talked, once we got the X-rays back, they had talked to a hand and wrist surgeon in Bozeman and kind of explained what was going on. And at that point, it was decided and recommended by the surgeon that I need to get down to Bozeman to have surgery done. But during that time of being in that hospital for maybe an hour to get the test done and cleaned up and that type of stuff, sheriff came in, state bull came in, the fish and game officer came in, and all took statements because, grizzly is a federally protected animal, and wanted to know, where exactly and what the whole story, like what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
one of the questions that Sheriff and Fish and Game asked when they came in, do you think this bear was acting in an aggressive manner? And it's like, no, doing what mama bears do. Do you think this bear should be put down? And I'm like, no, this is what mama bears do, you know. If it would have been something where she would have, you know, come running from half a mile away, it might be a different story. So we did an ambulance ride to Bozeman, and I went into the hospital there. Literally right from the ambulance, I was wheeled into the surgery room where they basically put me out, cleaned out my arm, and put a drain on it. I think it's called like a vacuum pack or something like that. Mm-hmm. So they could not do surgery for a few days. They wanted to make sure that the wound was flushed.
Naturally flushes, yeah.
Because the bone had been compromised with the teeth of the bear.
Wow.
And which, you know, a lot of bacteria is in there. So they were worried about if they sew me up and fix things, we could have, you know, a bad infection. So I expected to kind of be in and out of the hospital because I wasn't in that much pain. I mean, my face stinging and hurt and eyes were, you know, blurry a little bit. Not so bad now when I got there. My arm was hurt, but they had me on some morphine now, so it didn't hurt. And I thought I was going to be kind of in and out. And they said, you're going to be here for 3 days. I'm like, oh, man. Greg talked to my wife, told her how many days I was going to be there. Well, my 2 daughters and my wife drove over that afternoon.
That's a drive.
That's about a 5.5 hour drive.
Yeah.
I'm a prankster, and it's if somebody in my family is sick or something, I try and make it as lighthearted as possible. Make jokes, tease them, whatever it might be. Well, they show up to the hospital they'd stopped at some convenience store on the highway and got me gummy bears, huckleberry or grizzly huckleberry bears, bear claws. Everything that was bear related, they brought in there. So it was pretty funny.
That's awesome. Sounds like a good family.
That afternoon, when I was still, I think, a little medicated, when I came out of surgery, got on my laptop and posted something on Facebook that, attacked by a grizzly bear. And before it kind of gets out of hand, I'm fine, broken arm, everything is good. For some reason, this was one of those stories that went viral. By the time that I fell asleep, probably about 10 o'clock at night, I had, probably 100 comments from friends and people that I didn't even know, and it had been shared 20 times.
And this was a public post, so anybody could see it.
This was a public post, yeah. Being that, that I'm involved with TV, my everything is public, or I keep it that way so people can, they see me on TV, they can, check into that and, friend or follow me on Instagram, whatever it might be, of the different things that I do. So I wake up the next morning and there's 1,500 likes and, hundreds of comments. And there's a few, bad comments from people that are, I wish you'd die. Why are you killing defenseless animals? And that type of stuff. And then a friend of mine who lives in Bozeman texted me something. He said, you need to change your Facebook setting and shut something down, because this made it to the UK, and a vegan community on Facebook got a hold of this, and holy smokes, man. It was just the most brutal firestorm of verbal attacks on me that, it was
nuts. This is literally as you're coming out of surgery.
Yeah.
You're dealing with this.
Oh yeah. I'm like, holy smokes.
You don't really have much physical or emotional energy to deal with anything, and now you're dealing with this.
Yeah. So the viral attacks were just crazy, just brutal, and wished death upon me. I hope that grizzly, too bad he didn't finish it off. Hope your wounds get infected and you die, that type of stuff. And
It was a girl grizzly bear. Get the facts right.
so that was definitely an eye opener of, what can happen. So I just basically, my wife said, no, leave it. Because every time that I got attacked, by somebody that was, an activist or anti, hunting, I would have, 20, what I call my keyboard warriors that would defend me, and try and explain, this is, the way that they bring food to the table, trying to, being as rational as possible.
Yeah.
A lot of them weren't, a lot of them were like, screw you, that type of stuff. So it became a battle, but my wife thought, people need to see the extreme that some people are. You don't need to tell me that I need to be Catholic, or I need to be Jewish, or I need to be Republican, or I need to be a Democrat. Just live your own life.
I'm sure you don't have a problem with people not eating animals and living their lives.
No.
And you could even disagree with it, but you don't tell somebody that you wish they died.
No. To be forceful about your beliefs is what drives me up the wall. It's just things are so extreme now. Social media has created that ability to fire things off from, the joke is, from your mom's basement. Say whatever you want.
So your wife encouraged you to not make the post private.
When the backlash started coming back, she said, just leave it alone. Just don't do anything. And I told them, do not respond to it. And
You told your wife and your family, don't get involved.
She's not on Facebook.
Okay.
But so they went back, they'd go back to the hotel room at night. And then the next morning or that night, I'd see them firing off stuff, my daughter. And I'm like, that sounds a little too, I don't want to say more educated than what my daughter would say, but I'm like, that doesn't sound like my daughter. And then the next morning I find out, Mom had my computer last night, and she was piping off. So it was pretty funny that they did that. But I just kind of left that alone until I came back to Coeur d'Alene, which I was in the hospital for 5 days. And at that point, I went private, and then I had to start kind of blocking people. It was...
What happened to make you change your mind about making the post private?
I was just tired of it.
It takes a lot of energy to go through that.
It did. When I got back, I'm kind of stuck in the house for a few days. So I just, sat down for one day and did all that, and, answered, I did numerous interviews,
Yeah, a lot of phone interviews,
A lot of phone interviews and a couple TV ones in town.
A hated man is reliving the moment he came face-to-face with a grizzly bear in the Montana wilderness.
With his arm in the mouth of a mother grizzly bear, Bob Legasa says there was only one thing on his mind.
Basically a fight for my life, and just doing whatever I could to keep her away from me and keep those claws and those teeth away from my head. One of the things that I'd promised my daughter, Hannah, she's pretty outdoorsy. That year we talked about her and I were going to go up to set up elk camp and and hunt for a week. And
this is 2019.
2018.
Oh, still 2018.
Yeah, this was as soon as I got back from Montana, I was supposed to take her out into the woods for the week in Idaho and hunt. Well, it's like, that wasn't going to happen. So I sat in the house for about 2 or 3 days and wasn't on any sort of pain meds or anything anymore, and just, taking the medicine that they had provided me. And I'm thinking, there's like, we can go hunting. And so I asked her, do you want to go hunting for a day? I can't, get too crazy. We can go, a couple areas that are pretty easy to hunt.
Even though she knew you were at quite 100%, she knows her dad. She's like, you can make it. You'll be okay.
I was literally, my arm was in a cast, soft cast. That was it. My eye had stitches in the inside of my eye because had that in the emergency room when I was in Livingston, because I had a claw mark that was literally like a centimeter away from me losing the eye.
Wow.
It was really tight. So I had issues with that eye kind of watering, but I mean, I was fine. I was literally fine. I had a broken arm. I mean, kids fall off swing sets all the time, break their arms, and they're back to, riding their bike or whatever. That was it.
Do you still think you're a kid in your mind?
Yeah. I'm a big, dumb kid. So we went out and she shot her rifle. We got her all dialed in again. And so we went out. It was kind of the last day of the season that she could go. It was the last day that
How long after the attack was this?
the second or third. It was the third day, so it would have been 8 days. It was 8 days after the attack, and we went out to my friend's piece of property and gave out a bugle, nothing. We moved around a little bit down towards the bottom of the creek, and I had a pole a ski pole that I was using as kind of like for walking, for stability. And I gave out a bugle when we get down by the creek. Get an answer. About 150 yards away, we kind of creep up over the hill. There's all these cows all over the place, and she's immersed, and this was total sensory overload. And it was really cool to see that in her, just to be surrounded. And finally the cows move away and the elk's bugling. We move up over the peak a little bit over the ridge, and there's the bull. So she ends up getting a bull her first morning.
Wow.
And now I'm here with an arm that's completely wrapped up. I'm like, how am I going to do this? So we had to go in to cross the creek because she had shot across the creek. And when we got across the creek, it was really brushy. So I had my counter assault bear spray in my hand as I was walking through this brush. I'm making noise.
There are less grizzlies in Idaho than there are in Montana, but they're still there and there's still a chance. And Bob really wanted to avoid having a second bear encounter in the span of 8 days. Let me say that again. Bob's arm was being chewed on by a grizzly bear 8 days ago. Bob's daughter, Hannah, had shot her first elk, and the two of them were really excited, but didn't exactly have a plan how to clean and carry the 800+ pound bull elk out. That's about the weight of a big motorcycle. Hannah was healthy and able, but it's a multi-person endeavor, and her dad, in case you forgot, the guy that just got attacked by a grizzly bear 8 days ago, yeah, that guy. He is still nursing injuries, limited to one arm, has a messed up eye, and is using a ski pole as a walking stick to stumble around the woods.
So luckily I had my friend who owns the property. He was there, and I got on the phone and I called up my buddy Greg, and he goes, well, I'm just coming over the hill right now. I could be there in 20 minutes. Because he was getting ready to go back to Montana because he was guiding. And so had a couple of friends that made it there and got the elk out, and it was just kind of a nice ending to the whole thing. And it was good for me. And
just to get outside.
Kind of get back into it, and
share that experience with your daughter has to be priceless.
Yeah, and that was the whole thing about it. Was just that was icing on the cake. That just like, okay, turn something that was negative, bad, into something that was a good positive, and turned into be kind of a weird, an incredible story.
Hunters go entire seasons and years without getting an elk, and Hannah gets a bull on her first attempt. You can tell Bob is as proud as a dad could possibly be. Not only that she had success, but has proven that she now has these skills to harvest and provide healthy, all-natural food for herself and her family, and hopefully will be able to pass these skills on to the next generation after her. Since then, Bob has also been back to southwest Montana in the same area he was attacked.
I went back there this year as a guide, and I was guiding in the same area. It had snowed 6 inches the night before, so from all these different areas that we went into to hunt, I saw grizzly bear tracks everywhere.
Wow.
Everywhere.
Wow.
There was one set that we saw that we started walking and like we're looking in the print and it's like, that's weird. And it was a sow and a cub. And we thought, we don't need to be going in here. Yeah. I would rather see a boar by itself than see a sow and a cub together, because the boar is probably going to run, maybe bluff charge, maybe attack, but I doubt it. But a mama bear, she's going to come after you. Yeah. She's going to get rid of the threat. Yeah.
She's not just worried about her own safety.
Yeah. As soon as we saw the two prints, it's like, okay, we got to get out of here. Yeah.
Even though you're hunting elk, I know that you love those animals by the way that you talk about them.
Hunters are some of the biggest conservationists there are, and for some, they like being out in the woods. And I mean, I've got lots of friends that haven't shot an elk in, 10, 15 years, but they still go every year because they just love being in the mountains. They love being with their buddies. They love drinking beers by the fire. They love, that almost, it's
just being around them is exciting.
Yeah, being around them. And, we are, I can speak for myself and most everybody that I know that, we are just huge supporters of, wildlife management and making sure that those animals are, taken care of. There are organizations that I belong to, like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, which, your membership pays for, along with tens of thousands of others or hundreds of thousands of other donors of, they'll buy 50,000 acres in Montana that they will deem wildlife habitat for elk, and they'll go in and make sure that, they've got great food source and that type of stuff. So, yeah, hunters are conservationists,
The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has protected over 8 million acres of wilderness habitat for elk, grizzlies, and all the other wildlife living in these environments. You can learn more and even contribute yourself at RockyMountainElkFoundation.org. Even though most hunters really care about the animals in the wilderness that they're in, unfortunately there are exceptions.
There is in everything that we do, no matter what it is. You do have those, you've got your poachers, you've got guys that, fishing that, throwing their beer cans in the lake. You've got golfers, that are never replacing their divots and, throwing their garbage out. I mean, and no matter what, there are those people that give the rest of the group a black eye. And that's the sad part. And, the good guys are always trying to go above and beyond to, say, hey, we're not all like that. We see poaching signs out all over, call it in. I mean, I've called in a couple of different things. One was poaching and another one might have been poaching. I didn't see the act happening, but there was some things that were out there. It's like, this doesn't look right. So, it's just trying to preserve nature, trying to preserve the sport. I hate to call it sport because it's not really a sport. I mean, I don't look at it as a sport. Sport to me is, basketball or skiing, that type of stuff. Yeah. Hunting is it's a food source for me, and it's
it's skill.
It's skill, and yeah. So it's
like more of a religious experience than a sport.
It is, and I can remember I guided my wife's cousins from Louisiana, and when they experienced that first elk bugling at 60, 70 yards, it's pretty loud. The look on his face, and then he turned around and looked back at me with that grin, like, oh yeah, it's a religious experience. Yes.
So when I initially reached out to you, I said that when I found your story, I found it really inspiring that you went through this traumatic experience that most people have nightmares about. And then afterwards, you're still out in nature, skiing and hunting. I didn't realize it was 8 days later. That makes it even more amazing. Do you have anything that you could tell somebody who has, a passion that they maybe they're afraid of something, they're afraid of getting back into their passion. How did you get back out into the woods so quick after such a traumatic experience? And could you give anybody else any advice on how to get over that?
I think part of my DNA is, you know, the thrill, the challenges of stuff, overcoming stuff, you know, for my skiing. I've learned so much from that, you know, where I've taken some pretty good tumbles, you know, and you get back up and you try and make it happen again, and you get better at it. And to do that, you have to be prepared, you know, and I feel that I've always felt, especially since I started hunting in the Montana area, that the first year I was not very well prepared. I mean, I had a pistol and bear spray, but didn't really think about it too much. You know, a couple years later, I became very aware of that. I got my pistol here and I've got my bear spray here, and ever since the attack, I've become extremely conscientious of where my bear spray is when I'm hunting, where my pistol is, and I've actually practiced with this counter assault. You know, popping the safety off, spraying it, and making sure that I know how things work and how quickly I can do things. And I mean, when you practice, you realize, oh, that's not working. And you figure out the best way to have that happen. So I guess to get back to your question, long roundabout.
No, this is good. This is good.
Of why I was able to get back out and be passionate about it, because, you know, it's always been a passion of mine to do that. And it's like, okay, I fell down and get back up. I might have had a different story, you know, if I lost a limb or I lost an eye or something like that. But I came away, in a sense, virtually unscathed. I mean, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. I mean, I got a couple scars and, you know, a broken arm, and that's about it. And so to come back was a little bit easier. I didn't have any nightmares. I think my first kind of nightmare was before this September, and it wasn't even a nightmare. It was just that I had a dream that came into a encounter with a bear, and, you know, the bear charged me, and that was it. And then I was awake. And
did you wake up as as the bear was charging?
It wasn't so bad. Yeah. So I didn't have any sort of, you know, nightmares. Yeah.
So, if somebody's gone through something traumatic, it seems like your advice would be, you know, dealing with that. It takes practice. You're not going to just get over traumatic things right away. Through your skiing injuries and being a professional skier, you've kind of been able to practice dealing with the fear and getting back on the skis or getting back out in the woods.
Yeah. Yes. It depends on, you know, what caused your trauma. I mean, if you're mountain climbing and, you know, you slip and fall down the hill and, you know, break your hip or break your leg, more than likely that guy's not going to give up, because, you know, it's a passion. He just realized, oh, this is where I screwed up. I won't do that again. Or, you know, just to try and be as mentally and well prepared as possible whenever you do these things. And then once you've kind of broke back through that barrier, it's just, you know, it's like a weight lifted off your shoulders. You know, it's like, wow, okay, I'm back. Yeah.
Fortunately for Bob, his hunting partner Greg had just had a lot of practice using bear spray and was very quick and efficient when it really mattered. What if Greg wasn't as fast to help?
Well, if he wasn't proficient and I guess, you know, well versed on how to use bear spray, you know, it could have been much worse. I mean, I could have been killed
very easily.
I could have had, you know, my arm could have just been mangled and crushed. You know, I could have lost an eye. I mean, there's so much more that could have happened literally in 2 seconds. I mean, because the bear was on me for maybe 2 seconds.
Wow.
Not very long. And, you know, another 2 seconds, I mean, could have crushed my head, you know. I don't know. So I'm thankful that he knew what he was doing. And, you know, it's great that that I trust my hunting partner like that. You know, whether it's hunting partner or my backcountry partner for skiing, that, you know, he knows how to use a transceiver if I'm stuck in the snow, or knows how to do this if something happens. So, you know, you've got to have, it's, in a sense, it's a buddy system. You know, you have to be prepared for the worst.
Yeah, you really had a firsthand view of how fast things can go wrong, and you guys were prepared, and you still ended up in the hospital.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that was literally 3 seconds. You know, that was kind of like a nanosecond. One thing that I'd like to say, though, for people that are out there and they know how to use bear spray, the second that you see a bear, get your bear spray out. I don't care if it's 100 yards away.
Mm-hmm.
Have your bear spray out and be prepared. You can wave and make noise if you've got the bear spray in your hand, or as you're getting the bear spray out, you can still be making noise. But it does not take very long for them to cover ground. They run 35 miles an hour.
Wow.
And it's like that fast.
Wow.
That is the one thing that I take away from this. The second that I have any sort of that is going to be an encounter, I'm grabbing the bear spray. I'm going to be ready, you know.
Even if it's so far away, you're like, oh, it's unlikely that bear's going to... Just have it in your hand.
Be ready. And when I go through areas that can kind of be, you know, kind of a bear haven, you know, there's certain, you know, you go through creek bottoms, and if I ever going through sagebrush, and I'll have my counter assault bear spray either in my hand, or I'll have it where the safety is halfway off and it's, you know, sticking out a little bit, and it's ready to be grabbed. So I'm just trying to be as proactive as possible.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that stuff. Actually, I've been doing some promotional videos for them last year.
Oh yeah, what's the brand?
Counter Assault. And that's the brand that we carried. There's a few other brands out there, but that was the brand that we carried. And then I wrote them a thank you. It's like, man, saved my life. And then that kind of started this. But the one thing about this can is it will shoot 40 feet. So if a bear is charging you, you don't shoot at his head or spray at his head. You spray at his feet in front of him. You spray, like, you know, a couple yards in front of him. Because when you spray, it billows up. So if you spray it at his head, and he's gonna probably run right underneath it. So if you spray at their feet or in front of them. I mean, you just, you know, if it was that garbage can, I would probably spray, you know, halfway between it, and I'd spray at the ground so that it would billow up and come into his face. So
Yeah, that's really good to know.
yeah.
If you remember 3 things from this podcast, they should be: number 1, always have bear spray easily accessible when you are in bear country. It is more effective at deterring bears than bullets. Number 2, pull out the bear spray as soon as you see a bear, even if it is far off. You can still wave your arms and make noise, but after you have the bear spray in your hand, ready to go. And finally, number 3, if you do spray it down in front of the bear so that it billows up into the bear's face. Don't spray it directly at the bear. I cannot think of anyone more qualified to give that advice than someone whose life was saved by bear spray.
I don't want to say that it was over dramatized, but it was.
Yes. You could say that.
It's very factual in a sense.
Bob's story was featured on a cable TV show where they do a dramatized reenactment of the events.
But, you know, like the blood dripping, you know, that didn't really happen. I mean, I had a little bit of blood running off my face, but it wasn't like, you know, dripping.
Mainly the reason why I'm doing this, like I love animals, obviously, and hearing about these stories. But whenever I read news articles or watch, you know, these shows on cable TV about animal attacks, there's like the music and the imagery, and it's all, you know, it's so sensationalized. And it's like the story itself is pretty crazy in and of itself. Like you don't have to add all this ridiculousness to it, in my opinion. And I love hearing about like the details of how the sagebrush was really tall and the snow and the sun wasn't even up yet. Like all those details paint a picture. I'd rather have an understanding of what happened than be told that I should think it's intense.
It's kind of like a book on tape is what we're doing there. Yeah. The sagebrush, like my best description of what it's like to walk through there, especially when there's bears in there or there's elk in there. It's kind of like walking through a corn maze. You don't know what's around the next corner or how you're gonna.
How many horror movies happen in corn mazes? Yeah. There's a reason.
Yeah. So anyway, that's it.
It's now been over 3 years since the attack, and Bob is still very active skiing and hunting in bear country. But his most exciting and new hobby is being a grandfather. I can guarantee you that kid is already being exposed to the beautiful outdoors one way or another. To see photos of Bob Legasa's recovery from the attack, hunting elk with his daughter, and, of course, all the bear-themed gifts his family brought him while he was recovering in the hospital, sign up for our email list. It's also where we are going to be doing some juicy giveaways and releasing exclusive bonus content, including a video where I break down every bear attack in the Bible. So please sign up for that email list at pt2.com. This show was co-produced by Scott Neary and myself. Music is by Davey Chedwigan and Joshua Lopez. I am Jeremy Carberry. Hope you make time to get outside today, even if it's just a short walk around your neighborhood to enjoy what's blossoming. Get out there. And always be sure to give the wildlife the space and respect it deserves. Thanks for listening. This was an epic story, and there are a lot more I'm excited to share. So subscribe and have a great day by going outdoors. Decentralized blockchain technology is creating a welcome alternative to our central bank systems, but crypto can be complicated and overwhelming. I know this because I've tried a lot of different exchanges and have paid a lot of not so upfront fees in the process. I've found that OKcoin is the easiest and most affordable on-ramp to decentralized ecosystems like Terra Luna, Avalanche, Ethereum, and many others. There are no fees to send and receive funds from your bank, and the fees to swap between assets are the lowest around. If you create and transfer $100 of funds to an OKcoin account using the link in this episode's show notes, after 30 days, the Teeth Podcast gets $50 worth of Bitcoin, and so do you. But please do your own research because this is not financial advice.